Across the borders of love. In a small town in the USA, there lived a boy named Alex. He was a simple and kind-hearted person. He loved nature, especially the tall trees and the quiet lakes around his town. Alex had a job at a local bookstore, where he spent his days surrounded by the smell of old books and the sound of soft music playing in the background. One day, while working at the bookstore, Alex received an unusual letter. It was from a girl named Sophie who lived in Canada. Sophie had written to the bookstore to ask about a rare book she was searching for. Alex found the book and decided to reply to Sophie himself. He wrote a short note, telling her that the book was available and he would be happy to send it to her. Sophie was thrilled to receive Alex's letter. She was a shy girl who loved to read and dream about faraway places. She lived in a small town in Canada, surrounded by mountains and rivers. Sophie had never traveled far from her home, but she loved to imagine what life was like in other countries. After receiving Alex's letter, Sophie decided to write back to him. She thanked him for finding the book and told him a little about her life in Canada. She mentioned how much she loved the peacefulness of her town and how she often spent her evenings by the river, reading books and watching the sunset. Alex was touched by Sophie's letter. He could feel her gentle spirit through her words. He wrote back to her, telling her about his life in the USA. He described the beauty of the forests near his town and how he loved to go hiking in the mountains. As time passed, Alex and Sophie continued to write to each other. Their letters became longer and more personal. They shared their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. They talked about their families, their favorite books, and their love for nature. Slowly, a deep friendship blossomed between them. One day, Alex realized that he had fallen in love with Sophie. He thought about her all the time, wondering what she was doing and how she was feeling. He loved the way she described the world around her, and he admired her strength and kindness. But Alex was afraid to tell Sophie how he felt. He didn't want to lose their friendship if she didn't feel the same way. Sophie, too, was beginning to have feelings for Alex. She loved receiving his letters and looked forward to reading his thoughts and stories. She felt a strong connection with him, even though they had never met in person. But like Alex, Sophie was scared to confess her feelings. She didn't want to risk their beautiful friendship. Months went by, and their letters continued. They talked about everything, but never about their feelings for each other. One day, Sophie wrote to Alex about a difficult situation she was facing. Her mother was very sick, and Sophie was feeling lost and alone. She didn't know what to do, and she was scared of losing her mother. Alex's heart broke when he read Sophie's letter. He wanted to be there for her, to comfort her and hold her hand. Without thinking, he wrote back to Sophie, telling her that he loved her. He told her that he had been in love with her for a long time and that he wanted to be by her side during this difficult time. After sending the letter, Alex was filled with anxiety. He didn't know how Sophie would react. Would she feel the same way, or would she be upset with him? He waited anxiously for her reply. A few days later, Alex received a letter from Sophie. His hands trembled as he opened it. Sophie had written that she loved him too. She told him that she had been afraid to tell him how she felt, but now she was glad that he had spoken first. Sophie said that Alex's love gave her the strength to face the challenges in her life, and she thanked him for being there for her. Alex was overjoyed to read Sophie's words. He felt a sense of relief and happiness that he had never felt before. He immediately wrote back to Sophie, telling her that he wanted to come to Canada to be with her. He wanted to help her take care of her mother and support her in any way he could. Sophie was touched by Alex's offer, but she was also worried. She didn't want Alex to leave his life in the USA for her. She knew that the journey would be long and difficult, and she didn't want to be a burden to him. But Alex insisted. He told Sophie that he loved her and that he wanted to be with her, no matter what. After much thought, Sophie agreed. She told Alex that she would be happy to have him by her side. So, Alex packed his bags and set out on the long journey to Canada. He traveled by bus and train, and even walked for miles through the countryside. Finally, after several days, he reached Sophie's town. When Alex arrived at Sophie's house, he was nervous. He had never met her in person, and he didn't know what to expect. But as soon as Sophie opened the door, all his fears melted away. Sophie was even more beautiful than he had imagined. She had a warm smile and kind eyes that made Alex feel at home. Sophie was also nervous to meet Alex, but when she saw him standing at her door, she felt a sense of peace. She knew that she had made the right decision in asking him to come. She welcomed Alex into her home and introduced him to her mother, who was resting in bed. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Sophie spent all their time together. They took care of Sophie's mother, who was slowly getting better. They went for walks by the river, explored the mountains, and talked about their future together. They made plans to build a life in Canada, where they could be close to Sophie's family and the nature they both loved. As time went on, Sophie's mother grew stronger, and she was able to leave her bed. She was grateful to Alex for coming to help her daughter, and she welcomed him into their family with open arms. Sophie and Alex's love for each other grew deeper with each passing day. They were inseparable, and they knew that they were meant to be together. One day, while sitting by the river, Alex took Sophie's hand and told her that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. He asked her to marry him, and Sophie, with tears in her eyes, said yes. They hugged each other tightly, knowing that they had found a love that was strong enough to cross borders and overcome any obstacle. Sophie and Alex's wedding was a small and simple ceremony, held in the garden of Sophie's home. Their closest friends and family were there to celebrate with them. As they exchanged vows, they promised to love and support each other for the rest of their lives. It was a day filled with love, joy, and the promise of a beautiful future together. After the wedding, Alex and Sophie settled down in Canada. They built a cozy little house near the river, where they could watch the sunset every evening. They continued to write letters to each other, even though they were now living together. It was their special way of expressing their love and keeping the memories of their long-distance relationship alive. Years passed, and Alex and Sophie's love only grew stronger. They had 2 children, who filled their lives with laughter and joy. They taught their children about the importance of love, kindness, and the beauty of nature. They often took their kids to the places where they had spent time during their early days together, sharing stories of their love and the journey that brought them together. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset over the river, Alex turned to Sophie and said, "I'm so glad I found you, Sophie. My life is complete because of you." Sophie smiled and held his hand. "I'm glad you found me too, Alex. You are my love, my strength, and my everything." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, Alex and Sophie knew that they had created something truly special. Their love had crossed borders, overcome challenges, and brought them together in a way that was magical and beautiful. They were 2 souls, united by love, who had found their way to each other despite the distance and the obstacles in their path. And so, Alex and Sophie lived a life filled with love, laughter, and the beauty of the world around them. Their story was one of true love, a love that had been tested by time and distance but had emerged stronger and more beautiful than ever before. It was a love that would last forever, a love that would continue to inspire those who heard their story. The voiceover in this video is provided by English Gum. Copying or re-uploading is strictly prohibited.